While all children and adults can seem particular about their likes and dislikes, people with sensory processing disorder will be so affected by their sensory preferences that it actually interferes with their normal everyday functioning. Clinical psychologist Dr. Tim Hope joins us this morning to share more about this disorder. Welcome back, Dr. Hope.
Morning.
Now, this is something that people may have not heard before, also known as SPD, sensory processing disorder. Tell us what it is.
Sure. So what we have is, we're human beings, we have senses, right? 5 senses: see, hear, smell, touch, taste. Some of us, though, have, because of the way our nerves are wired together, the way our brains are wired, we're just oversensitive in one or some of those areas of sensory. And so when they get extraordinarily oversensitive, and when those senses get jumbled in our brains, it really can be very overwhelming and overstimulating for us. And that can lead to dysfunction.
Now, who does it most commonly affect?
Well, we don't understand very well which particular person will develop sensory processing disorder, but we know that it is more common in certain psychiatric conditions like high-functioning autism or Asperger's disorder or autism, or some kids with ADHD can often have this, but it doesn't have to be a part of that condition. There are plenty of children out there who have an overstimulation effect and even a sensory processing disorder without those other conditions.
Okay, so I'm sure it's tricky to diagnose exactly what it is that's affecting them based on their symptoms. Now, is this something that is caused by the environment? Is it genetic? Or is there evidence of exactly what causes it?
So what we think is that this is a neurological condition. Probably it's going to be both genetics and the environment that have an interplay, but we know that it can run in families. We know that it can pop up unannounced in a particular child in a family, so we think there might be some hereditary causes, but this is not something that a parent can create in their child. This is not something that you're going to cause in your child. So you should not feel badly about that if your child does happen to have some sensory sensitivities or even the sensory processing disorder.
I think it is natural for parents to automatically feel guilty. What could I have done differently? How could I have changed?
Yeah.
But it is something that you can't necessarily change, you can just make it better.
Right.
And we'll talk about treatment in just a bit. Let's talk about examples, some specific examples of where children may actually be experiencing this hypersensitivity or oversensitivity.
Right. So these are the children who cannot tolerate the seams in their clothing. So I'm really happy that they no longer make socks with a seam around the toes, because that was really one of the most common triggers for kids. Or the tags in the backs of shirts or the underwear. Or certain smells. So you'll see in a number of school environments that they're banning scented deodorants or perfumes or hair products because that will trigger either allergic reactions in kids, or even more commonly are these hypersensitivities to the sense of smell. So it really can be a texture. A certain kind of texture will result in a child really rejecting a particular group of foods, or the tastes. It really can go in any of those sensory areas.
But it is oversensitivity.
It
a
is.
lot of us, I mean, tags drive me crazy in certain
That's
things,
right.
but it's when it's oversensitivity and when it actually affects your normal everyday functioning.
That's
so
right.
much to the point that it's a disorder.
So we'll see children who are so overstimulated by sounds that they'll refuse to go to a birthday party because it's just too much noise for them. And they have to cover their ears and they're gone. They do not want to be anywhere near that. That's interfering with a child's daily life, with a child's daily functioning.
And no child should have to feel that they don't want to go to a kid's birthday party.
Right.
So there are ways that parents can take care of it and make sure that they are not being affected negatively by this disorder. And we'll talk about that in just a bit. But first, it's not just children, though it's most common to be to have children be affected, but also adults can be affected as well.
Right. We've really gained a lot more understanding about this through a number of researchers who are doing some work on trying to understand what is it, how common is it, how do we formally diagnose it. And there was a book that came out called The Out of Sync Child that's sort of considered the Bible of this area, but this is really relatively recent. And so what's happening is a lot of adults who as parents are having children with these sensitivities are now looking at themselves and saying, oh geez, I really have a number of these conditions too. I really avoid these certain circumstances. I avoid these types of experiences because I know I get overwhelmed by it. And so they're now diagnosing themselves with SPD too.
So we'll talk more about what you can do if you think your son or daughter may be affected by this disorder, what you can do for treatment, and how there definitely is help out there. Thanks so much, Dr.
Sure,
Hope.
you're welcome.